Welcome to Dr. Z PhD Interviews, place where I interview interesting, inspiring people who are actually boss. And today's special guest is Chelsea Che. Chelsea is virtual production supervisor and a lifelong artist. Chelsea, welcome, and thank you so much for being part of the interviews.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This is pretty cool.
Good. So my first question that I would like to start off with is if you can share a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, pretty much anything you want to share in terms of sharing with the viewers who you are.
Well, I'm a virtual production supervisor. I help make movies and shows. Currently, we've been working on two 8-episode, I don't know if direct to video is the term anymore, but direct to Netflix or whatever, shows that are both fantasy related. And I basically help get everything from motion capture and story and characters, everything into a game engine, the Unreal Engine, so that we can create the entire show in the engine live and get a cyclical creative loop faster instead of a traditional linear pipeline of most productions and movies.
Okay, it just flew over my head. I bet everything you said makes perfect sense to anybody who's in any kind of virtual industry, right? And when I was actually looking up information on you, Unreal Engine came up, and I had to actually Google it because I couldn't understand what is Unreal Engine. What is Unreal Engine, and what is your background with it?
It's a free game engine. And what I mean by game engine is it's software where you can build a video game, traditionally is what it's used for. And over the years, people have started visualizing movies and shows and cinematics inside the game engine. And what that gets you is a faster and free iteration of your production. So I started video games about 18 years ago, and one of the first companies I worked at is the company that developed the Unreal Engine. And basically, it gets you into the production faster.
You're trying to break it down for the layperson like me.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, I make movies inside a computer. And so movies and games are basically just points of light on a screen that are rearranged, and the game helps you the game engines help you visualize that in 3D so you can make a more realistic production. And nowadays, the game engines are indiscernible from reality. So you see shows like Mandalorian made with the same kind of pipeline that I use, except for they're using real actors and LED screens to project the environments that you're making inside the game engine. So like your background behind you, we can have that and have the actual lighting from that reflecting on your face and your glasses. And so it's very realistic. Yeah.
Oh, so we're talking about, it sounds combination of both, not only gaming, but also a film production, right? Or a film industry.
Correct.
How did you even start? What drew you, and how did you start working in this virtual world?
Well, I mean, if we go back to how I actually started in it, I dropped out of maybe like 1.5 years of college because I didn't realize the financial obligations of it. I was in Chicago, and I tried to figure out what can I do with my art skills, and I just wanted to draw every day. So I was like, I know, I'll be an animator. Never done that before.
So you're an artist, your background is in art. So you've drawn and you've done art all your life.
Drawn, painted, sculpted, whatever I could get my hands on. Artists have been my idols my whole life. No specific artist really, just more their ability to create. And so when I decided, I just, I don't want to work at coffee shops forever, even though this could provide a great future for me. I was a shift supervisor, and I called around all the different animation houses in Chicago, and they all said no because I had no experience. And I ran into an actual professional animator who had shows on TV at the time, John Chris Felucci of Ren and Stimpy. And they basically, after talking to him, tugging on their shirt tail for an hour or so, they were like, well, there's two types of people in the world, animators and non-animators. You have to decide which one you're going to be and be that. And I was just like, wow, okay, that could relate to anything. And I said, well, they won't let me in because I don't have experience. And he's like, work for free. And so I called all of these animation houses back and I told them I would be willing to work for free. And one place replied and said, what would you do? I'm like, I don't know. I'll punch holes in your paper. I'll sharpen your pencils. I'll get you fresh erasers. And, you know, I can be in there any 2 days of the week you want. I'm a shift supervisor at this coffee shop. And they said, okay. So a year and a half of working for free at this place, they finally said, we need you to use all of the little tricks and techniques and things that we've taught you along the way to help us with this cartoon. And it was the first thing I worked on was Animaniacs Macarena. And you can still find it on YouTube. And it was amazing. It was so fun. Then after that, I got a job working on Tricks, Lucky Charms, Mr. Clean, started working on Hysteria, the cartoon. So this is a while ago. And I went home. It cost me like $7.50 to get to work out in the suburbs, and it cost me $7.50 to get home, and I made $7.25 a foot. So every 16 drawings I did, I got $7.25. And if I didn't draw 16 drawings in an hour, I owed them money.
Wow.
I still walked home with a shit-eating grin every single day. They're paying me to draw. It was amazing. So I did that for a few years. And then a lot of the animation in Chicago went overseas. And so I didn't have work anymore. And a friend was like, well, do you have a computer? Do you know 3D animation? I was like, no. And so I got a computer, a really, really low-end computer. I was out of work, so I didn't have any money. My wife was working, my girlfriend at the time. She was working at a department store, was able to support us for a little bit. And so I'd walk to Starbucks or Barnes & Noble, take notes, go home, start trying to use this software that I'd never used before, go back to the coffee shop, come home with my notes and animate. And I ended up creating a little fight scene in 3D Studio Max, which I don't even know if it's still around anymore. Went to Midway Games and showed it to them, and they were just like, oh, this is terrible. No, I'm sorry. Because I'd never even had a computer before, let alone 3D animate. And I was like, what would you fix? And so they gave me notes. I went home, I fixed it, called them again the following week and said, I think I've got it. Can I show it to you again? Took it in. This is terrible. We can't use this. We can't hire you. Well, what would you fix? So that went on for, I think, 6 weeks.
You're kidding me. So you learned through that dialogue with them, through them constantly showing you. So basically they were kind of mentoring and tutoring you by telling you what needs to be fixed.
Yeah, just like when I was in 2D animation. You know, you take it to your lead animator and you say, okay, and they're like, fix this, to give you your notes, you go back to your desk. And as a young artist, I was crushed every single time because I was like, here you go, this is amazing, right? So finally, after 5 or 6 weeks,
unbelievable,
they were like, okay, maybe we can teach you motion capture. You obviously have an eye for motion being a 2D animator, and we'll bring you in here. So I got hired and I was making 6 times the amount that I was making doing 2D animation. Still, you know, a starter income, but I was like, not 6 times probably, but a lot more. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, this is amazing. I can eat at restaurants that cost more than $7 on anything on the plate and or on the menu. And I was ecstatic. So I started making sports video games, and that was great. And then got recruited by the company that that makes the Unreal Engine, and then got stars in my eyes, moved to Hollywood, started working on movies with Robert Zemeckis, and then tried to start a video game company with a bunch of people because there was a lull in contracts. Hollywood didn't tell me everything's contract. You're not hired. You're full-time contract. I didn't realize that at first. So tried to start a video game company. It's very hard to do. That wasn't a success. Worked a lot of freelance, and that's where I started really learning because I was working on multiple video game after another. Commercials. I worked on an episode of Fringe where it was all animated and they took LSD and went into somebody's brain as a cartoons, and it was amazing. It was a great journey. And then more recently, found myself working as a virtual production specialist, a generalist in animation, motion capture, and game engines for like Jungle Book, Call of the Wild, lots of different video games and whatnot. Mouse Guard was one of the first things that really got people going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then eventually the company that I'm working with now, I've been talking to my lead or the CEO for quite a while, and he brought me over here, and I was so lucky because of the pandemic and lockdown and everything, there were a lot of studios that were still trying to get everyone in the studio, but then everyone was basically just let go. And now all of a sudden I'm working from home. We were able to, right before I started working from home, get a full studio set up, only 2 people in the office with the actors on stage. And I directed everything from home first supervised everything from home with the director of the shoots. And last couple of years have been fantastic.
Incredible story. Incredible. As I listened to your story, I drew so many parallels. And one of the things I noticed is how much tenacity you had, right? I'm picturing you as young self. This was years ago, going, first of all, sounds like you're self-taught. Essentially, everything you've done, you taught yourself, and you would go again and again for a while.
Yeah, the students sitting at the footsteps of the temple, let me in. Yeah. I want to learn the arts and the crafts.
Yeah. And you got in, and then your art was, one would call it rejected, right? They would toss it back to you and say, this is not enough. This is not what we're looking for. And you would tenaciously go back and go back and go back. Now, the parallel that I draw between that is a parallel between transition. And the parallel is that how much in a transition as well, somebody just has to not give up on themselves. And especially in the beginning, there's so many things that just don't fit right. And there's part of the world that seems like they're rejecting you, and to go back to yourself again and again. How much of that has helped you in your own personal evolution as a woman? How much of the past early on grinding and that grit that you had as a student and now as a professional, how much does that actually really enabled you to evolve as a woman?
Well, that's never stopped for me. It's not something that I stopped doing because I reached a certain level. I've always been kind of the mind of, once I get comfortable, then I can push it more. And because I like the challenge of learning. I like the challenge of striving towards something. Like goals for me are more like reaching a plateau to take a breath to go to the next goal. And I think a lot of my pressure on myself, the creative pressure on myself, the drive and whatnot, is I've known my entire life, it deep inside, when I hadn't started realizing it for myself, I'm a woman. In fact, when I realized that there was something, I hesitate to say different about me, but what other people perceived different about me, was when I was told I wasn't a girl. I couldn't play with girl toys. I couldn't play with the girls anymore. I had to play with the boys. And that was around age 4. And so I really strived for a lot of time in my life. Okay, well, what do you want to see? Where can I get that love? You know, and that was with my parents and growing up and just, you know, the 70s, 80s, 90s, more the 70s, 80s. 90s is when I started really realizing my own strengths as an artist. And I was associated more as an artist than anything else. But when I finally started realizing that no one was, that my skills were what were really getting the jobs for me, that it wasn't how well I fit in with the guys. It wasn't how well I acted like one of the guys. It wasn't how well my baseball cap, black t-shirt, black jeans uniform, that I had to be perfect every day so I fit in and I didn't let anyone know who I was. When I realized none of that had anything to do with it, I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And my wife, who's been incredibly supportive my whole life, ever since I met her. I met her in a goth club in Chicago 24 years ago. We just celebrated our 24th anniversary of meeting each other.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Huge deal.
Thank you. After, I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 months of dating each other and going across Chicago to each other's apartments every night. It's like almost since the first night we met, we were inseparable. And before I moved in with her, I told her, and maybe I didn't use these exact words, I was like, I'm transgender. And I don't know if I'm ever going to do anything about it. I don't think I can do anything about it right now because of my career path. What I perceived I couldn't do because of my career path, the people I was around, you know, all male groups, maybe 1 or 2 females in the entire companies at most of the places, and it's still a little bit the case. It's getting better. But I didn't feel like I could come out at the time. And she was like, okay, whatever, as long as you're happy. And so I went through this, I don't know, 15, 16 years of career before I finally was like, I finally told her, I was like, I am so unhappy. And my career is going great. You know, a lot of my life, I don't think about my life in general. I think about my career. Because there's not really a difference between that and my home life, because I'm doing stuff in the game engine at home as a hobby, and I'm making art all the time. So there's no separation for me between at home Chelsea and at work Chelsea. And at first she felt a little betrayed because all of these years she saw me as happy, because that's the face that I put on. And so it was a little bit of a hurdle. So
she felt betrayed, not necessarily.
That's a strong word. That's a strong word.
It is a strong word, but I understand that word. I think what partners mean is not necessarily literal betrayal, but is that it feels like betrayal. It's in the sense that it feels like she wasn't aware how unhappy you are.
Right. And so she wasn't aware of just how unhappy I was, and how I've had a lifelong internal struggle with self-doubt and, you know, as a younger me, harmful thoughts to myself. And, you know, that voice never really goes away. It just becomes that drunk friend that you say, okay, whatever, come on, let's go. And it was more like, I don't know if I don't want to speak for her, but it seemed like she felt like I had been lying to her as well. And in a way, because we're so honest with each other about absolutely everything.
Including your gender.
Including my gender. And it was a hurdle, but now, I mean, from that moment, she was incredibly supportive, and she revealed several things about herself that after 16, 17 years of being together, she had held back, and so it was a very bonding time. That, like, 2018 was very much of us almost rediscovering each other after such a long period of time. I had told her a lot about my childhood that I've never told her before, because I was like, oh, I don't need to talk about that. But it was great. We grew as a
That's
couple.
beautiful. That is beautiful to hear. And as you know, one of the biggest thing a lot of people who are in a relationship fear is coming out. They fear so badly that if they were to come out, their partner is going to leave them. What was for you personally, what was your biggest fear when you told, it sounds like it wasn't really coming out because you shared with your partner your gender, your relationship to gender and how you see yourself. It was more of letting her know how incredibly miserable and how much in a pain you were. What was your biggest fear?
I think my biggest fear was always with, like, I didn't really have a big fear that was focused on her. My biggest fear was focused on not being able to get work and not being able to provide. Like, we provide for each other in a very balanced way. But one of the ways that I provide the most for us, a lot of the time, not all the time, is financially. And, I think a lot of trans people have the fear of coming out and not having the stability that they might have developed as somebody, blending in as who they've presented themselves as so far.
Right.
It almost feels like starting over, and in a lot of ways it is. Depending on your support structure, I think. But the job that I had at the time, they were artists. They were very creative, and so I started wearing a little bit of makeup to work. And at first, I actually used the excuse, well, this helps the facial data that I'm testing, because you're capturing facial reference to project onto the characters. And I have very light eyebrows, and my lips are almost the exact same color my skin. So it actually did help the facial capture software register my face better. And so I was like, all right, well, I might as well put this on at home and wear it to work instead of putting it on there just for the facial capture. And why wipe it off before I go home? And it just felt right. It just felt comfortable. Because I've never really, or I never have had any kind of sexual feelings revolved around makeup or clothes.
Right.
Like in the past, when we still lived in Chicago and we were in our late 20s, early 30s, I'd go get a makeover with Jennifer, and we'd go out to the pansexual dance club and have a great time. And I didn't worry about anybody I didn't know seeing me. It was always a worry, if at all, of like work, people seeing me. And my theory was like, well, if they're going to see me in the route that we're taking to this club, they're probably more open-minded than I'm giving them credit for. So I didn't worry. I mean, I don't even know if I thought that intensely about it. I was like, yeah, this sounds fun. Let's go do it. And, I used to go to raves as a kid, and, we would go to techno parties. We love techno, is our favorite music. And, it's a very sexually diverse and gender diverse cultures.
Yeah.
Jennifer comes from Chicago industrial and punk rock, and we just kind of, I think that contributed a lot to techno and stuff. Chicago house. And so when I started wearing makeup, it wasn't, I don't know, it didn't feel off. And as far as people staring at me, I've got giant holes in my ears. So people were always kind of staring at me.
Do you think that helped? Having that
Maybe.
experience? Okay.
maybe, because every time I'd get the tiniest little stretch of the tunnels in my ears, be like, people are looking at me, and Jennifer would just be like, it's because you're handsome, or it's because you're pretty, you know, whatever I was presenting at the time. And you know, she's so flexible with her terminology and her outlook in life. She just wants people to be happy so she can focus on her art.
Yeah, she sounds amazing. And you two have been together such a long time and have been through so much together. Have you noticed any changes in your now marriage? Have you noticed any changes in your marriage in terms of dynamic as two women living together?
Maybe. I mean, we definitely, and I don't know if it's just because we're older and we're getting more into our own developed styles and our own developed interests, but, and this kind of reminds me, one of the things that kind of brought me into more accepting myself as a transgender woman and as presenting more femme or more feminine, and not caring who knows that I'm queer. You know, she's queer as well. She's dated girls and boys in the past and talks about those relationships, you know, exes or whatnot, you know, whenever it comes up. But I think it actually broke a layer of ice almost of that, so our energy flows more.
I can see that.
And it kind of came to, there was a point where I was like, okay, I don't like anything about me or my life. There was a point where it was like this, and I'm like, okay. And I've always my entire life like looked at self-help books and tried to you know, figure out my life and why I was so upset or whatnot. And it came to a point where I was like, okay, well, what do I like? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if what I like is because all the guys at work like it, or because I'm, you know, so I was like, okay, well, what was the last time that you had things you really liked? And I was like, well, when I was little, when I was a little girl, little Chelsea, was very much like, I like dragons, I like unicorns, I like, even though I was drawing tanks and like muscle men, but you know, that was kind of cool because I'm queer. And I don't know if when I was really little I thought about that, but anyway, projecting. But I was like, okay, well, I like fantasy. I like story. And so I started really diving into that, and it came out in my drawing. You know, I started, and I've always really liked the interesting edge of the what they call the occult, or the mystery schools or whatnot, or you know, and that's what kind of from reading fantasy books. And so I was like, okay, I'm older now. I have Wikipedia. Let's start reaching. Wait, this is from actual people. You know, this isn't just fantasy and sci-fi. And so, you know, in my art was reflected a lot of occult symbols. And Grant Morrison, point to a signed autograph of him that I have over here. I had gone to a talk of his where he talked about sigil magic, and then I learned about New Thought schools. And with the self-help kind of stuff that I had been reading, I put all of these different things together, like the Rosicrucians from the 1600s, when they tried to organize all of the ancient religions that came from what we now call the Middle East, and whatnot, before Christianity took over. I'm listening to a history school on magic right now, so I'm a little excited.
Well, you're speaking my language for sure, because that's my passion is metaphysical, and my passion is occult studies and all this stuff. That's something that I'm very.
It's amazing. And if you look at the most basic, I say basic, like the mind, what some people call the new mind schools of it, that started with like Madame Blavatsky. It comes into positive visualization.
Yeah.
setting goals, training your subconscious to kind of look for the little things that lead you towards your goals. Whether it's like you made a sigil to find quarters outside and now your subconscious looks for quarters on the sidewalk while you're
Did
just
you
kind of
apply that? Did you apply any of that? I mean, we're really talking about magic here, pure magic.
right.
Did you
Yeah.
apply any of that in terms of your own evolution as a woman, in terms of your transition?
I think so, because I started to realize a lot of my drawings look like vaginas. But they also look like the design of the sarcophagus of the ancient Egyptians, which is a depiction of the visual cortex in the brain. So it's like you have mirrored characters and then it comes out. And I share a lot of this on my Twitter channel every once in a while, but my art has always just been, my personal art's always just been for me. Jennifer shows in galleries and she's always like, you should show in galleries. And I'm like, I don't know, that's a lot of pressure. Because when I draw, it's more like automatic writing or automatic drawing. I just scribble. I do it on trains. I do it in Ubers. I just draw, and a lot of times comes out with hummingbirds and pumpkins and like
vaginas.
Yeah, and a lot of people say this looks like a vagina. The way that these skeletons are arranged and these birds are crossing their beaks and everything, it kind of makes this sideways eye shape or what.
I want to see some of your artwork. I'm going to have to, if you don't mind sharing, send it to me so that I can project it on a screen for people to take a look, because I'm curious to look at this. It sounds like subconscious art that you're doing.
Yeah, and then as I'm studying, listening to YouTubes and lectures on there's some great Berkeley classes on magic through medieval times and modernity. We're listening right now to a Mitch Horowitz. I bought it for Jennifer for her early birthday gift. It's a 12-week class on the history of, basically the history of the occult from Egyptian to the Middle Ages to now. And so when she's rewatching the class on Saturday, I'm sitting next to her, listening. But so a lot of my drawings and stuff have sigil work in them. And a lot of those sigils they do have femininity and, my interpretation of femininity, because everyone's different. My interpretation of what to me means to be a woman, where I'd like to push these things. I've been kind of leaving career and success alone because it's kind of driving itself right now. Who doesn't want to be a cryptocurrency billionaire? But, I mean, whatever. There's a lot of things in there. And then a lot of it's just positivity. My whole life, I've really shoved positivity down my throat.
Yeah, you strike me as a very positive person, as a very forward, very optimistic.
I am, but I'm very, I've talked to you a handful of times now, and so I'm very not reserved. But I say that I'm an introvert, and that my extrovertedness is oftentimes only reflected at work. But or Twitter, but very much on Twitter.
Yeah, your Twitter is huge. You have a big account and you're I think that's the only social platform that you're very active on.
Yeah, I post my selfies that I post on Twitter. I post them on Instagram. And I bomb it with selfies. Every single day I post a selfie.
What about selfies? What is the significance of selfies?
It started as kind of a, hey, here's me on my way to work or whatnot. And in a way, it was kind of, I'm waiting at the bus stop, boom, kind of a check-in, a safety check-in. And Jennifer would see him and she'd be like, oh, you look so adorable. Look at you. You're beautiful. The sunlight catches your eyes. Just great. Whatever. And it kind of got into a habitual thing of posting selfies almost every time that I get dressed up. And one is to kind of check and see what my makeup's looking like from the angle that I like to see it. Because a lot of it's camera angles and lighting, and you learn what your
Right.
sides are. Like my camera's up here, not right here. And
I should do that.
my hair's terrible right now, but
I'm
anyway.
your hair looks great. I'm
Thank
not
you.
sure what you're
I
seeing in
keep
your
messing
camera.
with it.
On mine, it looks great. I think your selfies are, that's what actually drew me to you immediately, your selfies. And I remember when I pulled a picture of your selfie on the media that I'll be sharing for this interview, and said, "Is this picture okay?" And you said, "Oh, that's fine. It's the selfies change every single day." And I love that attitude because it implies you being fluid in yourself, you being fluid with your beauty and not rigid, and allowing your beauty to evolve. And do you find that selfies do that to you, that they in a way mirror back to you how fluid you are?
Oh, for sure. Like I see selfies of myself. Like as far as my selfies have progressed from when I first started coming out. I shave my head. I wear wigs. But when I first came out, it was just makeup, along with my all black clothes. And I still wear all black clothes for the most part. Black is so great. And I've got leggings that have sigils all over them.
I second that. I second that.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. You dress so good.
Thank you.
You are a fashion. I look forward to seeing your fashion all the time. I watch your videos every week.
Thank you.
And I started just wearing makeup, and I think a lot of the people at work, as far as my perception, my interpretation of them seeing me, I think everybody was like, "Oh, this is just the queer guy at work that wears makeup," and they were just like, "Whatever, it's what my old name used to be. It's just that person," and everything was fine and everything was great, and I would take my selfies along the way, and then I was like, I'm gonna see what a wig looks like. And I tried this just very basic brown wig to start off, and I was like,
oh my goodness, I so cannot imagine you. I'm so familiar with you with this. And this is pink to the bottom. I mean, a lot of wigs you have are pink all the way throughout. And it's gorgeous. Just
Thank you. It's so fun. And Jennifer was very much like, this isn't you. This is very plain.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, it works great. For me, it just didn't express, like, I just kind of looked like another person. And I've never just looked like another person.
I love that.
And so I was like, okay, well, I saw a pink wig and I was like, that's fantastic. And I had seen some performers online that had pink hair that I really looked up to, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna try it. And I tried the pink hair on. It didn't look like a costume because I had lucked out. I get my hair primarily from websterwigs.com, and do a little promo for them. And it's not in an overly expensive price range, and it was enough to try out, and I put it on, and Jennifer's home from running. And it didn't look like a costume, so I went with it, and I started taking my selfies with that. And at first I wore it very high, and I didn't know what I was doing. And then finally I had read that the average female hairline is 2.5 inches from your brow, and I was like, okay. So
it was a learning curve. Your hair looks natural. Your hair looks natural. It matches your complexion beautifully. It looks amazing on you.
The darker colors often have darker webbing on the edges, and so it doesn't blend so well. And I do have it a little bit blurred from my Zoom meeting. But I had noticed that along that work story path line, a lot of people they were like, wait a second, this is different.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then after a while I was like, it doesn't feel right with people calling me my old name.
Yeah.
And this, and I've never had any kind of affiliation, like emotional, maybe I did when I was younger, but the emotional attachment to my family, who gave me my name, I was just like, I don't know. And so I was trying out different names, and Jennifer was like, well, what about Chelsea? Like, she gave me a bunch of names that she thought were interesting, and Chelsea stuck, you know, Andy Warhol and the Chelsea Girls, the Chelsea Hotel, the Chelsea District, you know, like
Yes.
artsy and
And you
fancy.
love history and you love historical references, so it
Right,
goes hand in hand.
right. And so I was just like, yeah, I was dazzled by it. It had a magic to it. And so I was just like, hey, everybody at work, you call so-and-so this name and it's not their real name. You call so-and-so this name and it's not their real name. I'm going by Chelsea now. And with my middle name, Jay, I just kind of kept that Chelsea J. And my last name, I plan on changing as well. So, and I think along with Jennifer's help again, I think eventually it'll be Chelsea J. Enid Pinksit.
Wow, what a great name.
Yeah, Pinksit is the signature that artists put on a painting. And it's pink. And Enid is a kind of a name from classical stories in the 20s, you know, and the 20s is kind of when women started coming into publicly their strengths, and in at least in our culture here, and it just fit. It just, you know, so I'll probably be changing it to that.
It sounds perfect, and you're obviously incredibly creative, and you clearly imbibe everything you do, from the way you appear, your appearance, to your expression, to your work. Everything is imbibed with creativity and color. When it came to makeup, I always make an assumption. The way I see makeup is our faces are playing canvas, and it's really painting that canvas. And I make an assumption believing that artists are just naturally inclined to be really good at makeup. Was that something that was you initially were really great at, or was there a learning curve for you? No.
Oh, it's terrible. And this comes back to the selfies, taking them. I look back at old selfies of myself when I first came out, and from being on Twitter and talking with other trans femmes and whatnot, is like, we all have an awkward phase. And I think this might be for all transgender people when they start out. We all have a very awkward phase, like anybody discovering a new look or a new feel or whatnot, like an adolescent going to a teenager
Yes.
going to a young adult. It's a transition. And, you know, same thing with art or with makeup, is you start, you know, by kind of, like, I would watch makeup videos of women that I really enjoy their look, and that I might want to aspire towards. And I would try that, and I would just, it looked terrible, but I have selfies on my way to work, and I thought on that day I looked amazing and I felt great. I felt radiant, and I did. But if I looked like that now, I would wipe it all off and start over. You know, it's just, you know, I mean, actually, it depends on how late I am for getting to work, or how close to work, not late. I don't go show up to work late. How close to work it is. But I would, depending on, but sometimes you just go with it. You're just like, okay, one lip is a little too high. I'm darker on this eye than the other eye. Okay, I'll put the hair over it. And you just, you go with it. And, you know, a little trick, if you are late to work, smudge your lipstick so it doesn't look perfect. You know? And you'd be like, oh, I just ran out of the house.
Oh my God. I slept in my makeup trick.
Sure.
What was the biggest makeup mistake you made, that if anybody watching who is starting off, you can say for sure to make sure to avoid?
I don't know if it's things to avoid, because it's all personal preference. But I think one of the things that really amplified my makeup skills was when I really started getting into skin hygiene. When I first started, I would just wake up, take a shower, maybe or maybe not use lotion, and just put my makeup on and go. And a lot of it, I was caking it on because of my dysphoria of my beard. And I would just I would cake it on. It was early in my HRT, so my whiskers weren't as soft and sparse. You know, I still haven't gotten electrolysis
You're
or
kidding.
laser. No, this is all just the power of estradiol valerate, and you know, maybe the progesterone comes in, but it you know, and there's a few tricks for me. I don't know if it works for everybody, but I would say I was overly caking on the makeup because I was ashamed of my what I saw as my masculine attributes and appearance and whatnot. And then you know, I wasn't blending very well. I wasn't contouring. Not that you need to contour. There's days where I don't use any contour. There's days where, you know, I change it up. Today I contoured incredibly. So you know, it's an interview. But and I was very conservative with my colors. You know, because I was working on stage, and so you get sweaty and whatnot. And I tried not to stand up too much, but here was this big pink hair all of a sudden, and people started seeing me not as the, you know, queer guy wearing makeup. They were just like, wait, this is different. This is awkward.
Yep.
And I felt lucky that we had a like a one bathroom was for everybody, so that was no issue. But it was about a year of working at that job before I started using the women's bathroom with a slight bit of comfort. I still have a little bit of like hesitation, like going in the bathroom when there's other people in there, but I just go, you know, now it's the bathroom. You know, you just do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but there was definitely, to kind of jump into a different topic, there was definitely this we see you as a gay man, like eye to eye, we see you as a gay man wearing makeup, to say, if this is me, you know, there was definitely a looking down upon me, a talking down upon me. You know, I got a lot of well, when I got mansplained in meetings, like I never gotten someone to explain what I was explaining in meetings until I started wearing pink hair. So it was a little bit affirming, and I got the welcome to womanhood kind of.
But affirming, not in a, affirming through the channels you would rather not be affirmed through.
Right. Yeah. But so it was like, I knew how women got treated in the office, and I saw it because I never really saw the guys acting like guys from a guy perspective. It was always as an outsider trying to go, okay, is this something I'm supposed to mimic to fit in? And hurt the traffic. But it was very not shocking, but revealing. It was very interesting. It was like, wow, my life is changing. You know, then I started getting breasts from my hormones, and you know, people didn't look me in the eye when they talked to me, and which was like, okay. And that's where Jennifer was like, well, here's start wearing necklaces more, like more feminine, softer necklaces. And so they're like, oh, they're staring at my necklace. But it, for the most part, everybody was very polite and very good, and very, like, didn't treat me much different at all. I still was a senior employee. They still valued what I said. They still listened. Some people didn't, and they were very blatant about it. And they moved on.
But you sounds like you're still experiencing some of that women-centric socialization, which will happen anywhere, really. It could happen at work.
Outside of work now, at my current job, it's very diverse. It's one of the most diverse and inclusive, and everybody's very respected. And maybe that has to do with we're all working from home for the most part, and there's no like office posturing going on. But I haven't noticed it at all at my current job. And it's like, this is great. And there's actually a very big balance of minorities and women at my current job, and they pride it.
That's great.
And maybe that's because they're primarily in Canada and New Zealand and India and Mexico and New York and Colorado, and maybe not so much in Hollywood. But, you know, I think everyone's growing too. I think there's a lot with the internet. People are starting to go, oh, people don't like that. And, you know, I'm going to get a backlash if I don't learn. I think a lot of people are learning to respect other people, not just to mind what they say, but to actually respect other people and see other people as individuals on an equal scale. It's
I agree. I think it's definitely changing for the better slowly, but it is. To circle back to your transition,
mhm.
for you personally, what was the biggest challenge in your transition for you?
Biggest challenge was actually coming out, and a lot of it was, you know, a lot of it was finally having the resolve, very similar to the resolve that I use in my career
Mm-hmm.
of, okay, I can be miserable because I'm not out, or I can potentially, you know, I projected any kind of like obstacles that I might have based on what I had read online and other people's experiences, books I've read, YouTubes I'd watched, and or I could deal with that. I could deal with this or
Mm-hmm.
deal with that. And I felt like either way has the potential for ruin, but one way has a potential for success.
I love how you
And
look at it. Yes, I agree.
thank you. And I've always really looked at it at that way of like you approach an artistic technique that you appreciate in somebody else. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
always appreciated the fluidity, the matter of factness that women have about who they are and how
Mm-hmm.
they present themselves. And I'm generalizing, but a lot of the women that I saw and that I appreciated and that I might have been like, I'd like to be like that. Or I'd like to dress like that, or I'd like to look like that. That looks fun. That looks like a new challenge.
Mm-hmm.
This guy stuff I had figured out. It was like in a pattern for many years of my life, and it was boring. It was dry.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go and look for new outfits presenting as male, and I'd just be like, I don't know, what's in my size? What's everybody else wearing? You know, and so I ended up with a lot of t-shirts and jeans. Not that that's innately male, but that's what I saw in the
Mm-hmm.
gaming world and whatnot. It's like,
Yeah.
ooh, I got the quirky t-shirt, you know. And whereas now, I'm like, wow, H&M has a really awesome dress for $24. I'm gonna get it, and it's in my size. And then I get it, and I'm like, I look like a princess, or this looks terrible, and it hangs on the shelf for a while, and until I move, you know, donate it or just get rid of it. But a lot of the obstacles, I think, a lot of the obstacles were learning how to navigate socially,
Mm-hmm.
and less at work, because work is kind of, I find patterns at work, and it kind of turns into a formula
Mm-hmm.
of, and I visualize in the morning every day while I'm riding my bike. I visualize my day, and I plan it out according to what I know is going to happen, and then I wing it when it changes. But going to work, riding the train, like I would ride the train. I don't drive. I don't have a car. I used to take public transportation everywhere. Now I take ride share or the ride apps. But when I'd be on the train, you'd almost always get somebody that would be like, I love your hair. Can I touch it? As they're reaching towards you, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And then,
Boundaries.
yeah, exactly. And then the inevitable, can I ask you a question? And
Oh,
then it would be something very personal about my genitals. Or,
you're kidding me.
oh no, it all the
I
time.
was expecting some. Okay. Well, all right.
All the time. I mean, occasionally you get someone, you know, that just is complimenting somebody and you feel like, oh, I'm just another person and maybe I look great today. And you get people wanting their, you know, their daughter or their child would be like, oh, she loves pink hair. Can she say hi? And I'm like, yeah, sure, hi. And I was like, do you like Princess Bubblegum? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, so do I. I was like, my wife looks like Marceline. It's her girlfriend now in the episode, spoiler. But
That's great.
you know, I've been pulled over by the police waiting for the train. And they I'd never in my life that I've been bothered by the police before I came out and started presenting feminine or more feminine. But several times the police have stopped me while I was waiting for the train on the train platform, asked to search my bags. And at first I had a very privileged approach to it. I'd be like, what's going on? You know, instead of just, you know, don't say anything, you know, just hold on. But they were looking for condoms because if they find condoms in your bag as a transgender woman, they assume that that is, you know, you're looking for selling sex, and then they can arrest you.
Because transgender women can have condoms for safe sex.
Yeah, evidently. And, you know, I've had police and other people pull up to me when I'm waiting for the bus on Hollywood Boulevard, and I live in Los Angeles, and ask me, so are you working right now? I was like, I'm coming home from work.
How traumatizing is that?
I've even had to take out my work ID and show them.
So yeah, that's huge challenge. I can see how that is tremendous social challenge. And how do you manage to leave the house and use public transport, knowing chances are you're going to encounter either police questioning whether you are doing some kind of, you know, sex work? Not that there's anything wrong with sex work.
Exactly.
But I think that type of profiling, the problem is with the profiling, right?
And then I'm very visibly transgender, and I stand out, and I'm being very different than what people normally see. Even if I was passing, I look very different and sparkly and you know, very polished for somebody who, yeah, so the way that I deal with it, because I'm fortunate enough to have a job that can afford it when I do have to go in the office. A lot of transgender women, a lot of transgender people, a lot of people, they have to take public transportation because it's their only choice.
Right.
I am fortunate enough that now I take ride apps. But for the most part, I stay home. Other than going out for a couple of times to have drinks with friends or meet the director to talk about the show or just to be a friend. We've gone out twice since COVID really hit. And we get absolutely everything delivered. My wife goes running every day in the mountains. So every once in a while on Saturdays or Sundays when I have the time, I go hiking with her, and I don't have any makeup or hair on. And the whole time I'm out, I'm very like self-conscious, which she said she's a little worried about that, because it's like, I won't even, our kitchen window is in an area where people walk past it to get to their apartments. And if I'm not wearing hair or makeup, I'll close the drapes before I do anything in the kitchen. But if I'm wearing hair and makeup, open, having a great time, hey, full personality, because I've seen the shift in people's perception of me. Like for instance, the first job where I came out, my first thought was like, oh, some days I'll wear hair, some days I won't, some days I'll wear makeup, some days I won't, just like any other woman. And I got what a lot of women get is like, oh, are you when I went in with less makeup or no makeup, are you sick? Are you okay? Which is so rude. But it's other people's perceptions and the word vomit coming out of their mouth. And the few times that I went in without hair and makeup, just a baseball cap, because we had to be on stage at like 4:30 in the morning to prep it for, actors coming in. The shift went from this to all of a sudden there's fist bumps and dude bro talk, and people call me man and dude and Mr. And like you could see the audible relief in some people, like, okay, this is all just, maybe they're just doing this for whatever, an act. But then there were other people, all the people that were great were always great. They're just like, oh, it's you, cool, let's do our thing. It's work, let's get to work.
It's amazing how much power socially is attributed to appearance, especially hyper feminine appearances. And I agree with you. I had the exact thing before, no makeup, day off, letting my face relax. And, somebody who doesn't know me well, accustomed to me being in makeup, are you okay? Are you sick? Something is wrong. And it's very, it negates the fact that we can be ourselves.
Right. And, it's like I almost enforce a certain rigidity that's almost like, I can't go outside without a veil. Or, for whatever reasons. I mean, that's totally different. And, but so it's interesting. And one of the ways that I hope that'll alleviate some of that is facial feminization. And I have a surgeon that I've been talking with, Justine Lee. She has videos for Justine Lee at UCLA Hospital. She has them on YouTube where she explains the entire process and of what she uses to feminize, or she even says, to like kind of the perception of femininity, the common perception like of femininity. Because
what is a feminine face, right? Yeah,
exactly, because like there was somebody that posted on Twitter the other day, they're like, I'm 55, is it too late to come out? Will I ever be able to become a woman?
Yes.
And I replied, chances are you've always been a woman, because they're exploring their gender. So I don't want to like, push anything upon them. Chances are you've always been a woman, and what HRT or just transition in general can help you do is bring your perception of being a woman and being feminine onto your physical, so that maybe you're more comfortable, your physical and how you perceive women and the look of a woman, or femininity, or I like to say femme, because it's not it's a style and look. It's not the style and look isn't the gender.
Exactly.
And that's
Absolutely.
one thing that what we call trans Twitter has really taught me, is there's so many different kinds of people that have the genders that they have, and have the perceptions of themselves visually that they have and that they want to develop. Like, I have friends of mine that were born assigned female at birth, who are very high femme, very feminine, very girly, traditional like public thought of what that all means, but they use pronouns he, him. And they consider themselves femme, or feminine, it's kind of, and it's all over. And there's lots of things, there's lots of genders that aren't even categorized in the LGBTQI.
Completely. And
plus,
it so can be separate from expression, and yet it can be the same, but it's also, like you just mentioned, can be completely separate from the way one expresses, and that expression is hopefully will move away, where the expression is genderless, in a sense. It's not assigned to particular lens of gender, and it's just an expression, just like there's so many other expressions that are genderless.
Exactly. And I mean, and I believe that the world's moving a little bit towards that, but and you know, and I see it, especially in the younger generations, the younger crowds, where the younger people I worked with, they were just like, whatever, you know, you're an
Mhm.
adult. I don't really want to deal with you. And it was because I was an adult.
Well, there's
Nothing to do
definitely
with
more
it.
fluidity in younger. I see that too. Fluidity in
Yeah,
sense of how they see things, their understanding of gender and expressions and all this other things is definitely very different from ours.
very. Oh, very. And I think, you know, the stories that are told through video games and movies and everything, it helps people grasp onto
Mhm.
the characters or the essences of stories that they associate with. And whether that's through, you know, some good old fashioned escapism, or like, I think I am like that character.
Exactly.
I want to watch more of that character. What are they doing? Or that person, you know, that role model, that image, and and it's a positive. I think it's a very positive thing when people, you know, log on to their favorite video game, and you know, whatever reason they give their friends for wanting to play as the character that isn't their gender or doesn't look like them, you know, they're more fulfilled uh, going around and bopping bunnies on the head, or collecting coins or whatever, as that character. And I think the freedom to be able to go through character selects and really design your character to represent you online, and even the name, um, you know, video games really give you an option of being whoever you want to be online.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about as well. How gaming specifically, and a film too, in terms of identifying with an image or character on the film, but I think gaming especially because you're able to sit down and you're able to game in that character for a long duration of time. I agree. I think it's such a stepping stone for people to start to express themselves, start to get in touch with that inner part of themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times I see people where it has been a gateway for them to realize that, wait a second, this is actually who I am. This is truly how I see myself on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, right up to people that like to cosplay fantasy characters. And you know, I have friends who work in movies who have played Dungeons and Dragons their whole life. And you know, one of our uh, uh, basically, he was saying that when he showed us his Dungeons and Dragons character, he's like, honestly, I am more this character than I am who you see in what you might call real life.
Hmm.
And you know, it was like some, you know, debonair swashbuckling character with a big mustache and everything. And and even for non-transgender people,
Yes, I
it's very
agree.
much that expression. And they feel like they're making decisions more based on who they are in the game than the decisions they make in life, which is based on social pressures or social norms, or whatnot, their interpretations of that, air quotes. Um,
I agree. I think it's really, really powerful. And I'm glad that you touched on that. I'm glad that you were able to sit down with me and go in depth with so many elements of your life, elements of your marriage, elements of your early self-taught
mhm.
experiences in the gaming, elements of what was the biggest challenges for you with being pretty much profiled and asked completely inappropriate things on public transportation and things you had to face. And clearly, everything you've been through has really very much shaped up you as the person you are today. And to me, you come across as somebody who is incredibly resilient. And you're the person that is always, I think you come, if I'm right, you strike me as somebody who loves challenges. You like
Oh,
challenges because that's, I think, how you primarily tend to grow as an individual.
I, I think so. You know, I've seen so many people that are like the exact same person all the way through life, and that's great. that's how they live their lives. But I'm always looking for the next challenge, the next big thing, and it's more exciting, you know, when I, you know, when I finally reach the end, I don't want to be like, oh, that was comfortable. I want my tires to be blown out. You know, I want all this scratches and scrapes, and I want to be like, wow, what an amazing ride. You know, because in the end, it's just a ride, and it's how you enjoy it along the way. I think humans are here to experience life, not to necessarily just propagate it. I think we're here to experience through individual eyes that only we can experience. Each individual can only experience life through their eyes.
Very true.
And wherever that information goes, maybe there's a big cosmic consciousness, you know, you contribute to that. And the more that you can explore and experience and you know, appreciate and enjoy other people exploring and experience, and not, you know, I don't know, not push anybody off their path. Yeah.
So well said. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being part of the interview. I'm going to put down your Twitter information. I'm going to put down perhaps a place where you get this magnificent pink hair, so that people, I'm sure that a lot of people have been inspired to watching this, because it's just such a beautiful look on you. I love that look on you. Thank you so very much for sitting down with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking with me. I always feel like I've gone through such a positive, transformative energy whenever I talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.